back to square one. So starting at the top once again is Abraxas, and I'll throw up this this diagram that will kind of show us ideologically what I'm talking about, where it is. Kind of, this is not exactly how it looks, but this will show ideologically where these things are. Okay, so Abraxas is beyond space and time, without which space and time, as Einstein said, all things would occur at once. But he also said that time is an illusion, and if time is an illusion, then space is an illusion. Okay, so in the archetypal realm below him is God or the sun, the highest good and fullness. The tree of self proceeds from here upside down and goes into the below. The below equals the between. The between realm is consciousness. So we're speaking about consciousness again on a feminine side, or on the opposite side of what we just read earlier as a full column. Okay, so in this column we have the growing one. Okay, is what it's called, the tree of life. It's Hakayim in Hebrew, is the tree of life, or in Hebrew is in Latin rather, the arbor vitae. Okay, so it is the medium between the collective unconscious and the conscious self and ego. Okay, just as in the other column, the burning one was the medium also between the collective unconscious and the conscious self or ego. Okay, so they both have that in common. The growing one, the tree of life, is the medium between the collective unconscious and the conscious self and ego. So we can see some anima aspects with this as well. Okay, so it heaps up growing living matter. This is how it greens, and it does so slowly. The tree of life, if we look at the tree of life as a system and understand how to use the tree of life as a system, we will find that it is a series and a system of classifications by numbers, by colors, by planets, by metals as well, because alchemy goes into it. And in a way, it's a way to turn your brain into a filing cabinet of ideas and to get all of your ideas, and everything, keep in mind, is an idea, into an order, and basically to have a way to classify anything and everything. Okay, in a very, 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 very highly compact format. Okay, so that is what it does, and it greens, so it is given life. It grows through this process. Okay, good and evil, just as in the other burning one or eros, good and evil unite here. Life and love stand opposed in its divinity. Okay, as well. Unique to its own essence, and it is collective to all. So it is an archetype. Okay. One's own knowledge and subjective knowledge is what it is. So it is the body of your own subjective knowledge, the things you know, the things that you've been able to place upon it. Okay, and what happens is, and I can speak on this because I utilize it every day. It's a part of me. I've internalized that system. The tarot cards go on it. You know what I mean? They act as a form of correspondences, and as and a form of knowing the world around you, knowing things around you, being able to classify things. Okay, what ends up happening here is you end up with a highly organized, a hyper-organized form of knowledge. It's the key to understanding how certain systems are syncretic as well, though, too. It helps you to do that with a high level of accuracy. Okay, so it is symmetrical and thus is mandala-like. It is a symbol of the self as a process of growth. Epigenetic growth plays in as DNA is read differently because of outside experiences and behaviors altering the genetic function. Okay, as you start to see things differently, and as you interact with things differently on the outside of you, and because of the way that you are intaking information, you begin to change. And the beauty of the tree of life, because of its hyper organized structure and the way you're able to organize things on it in a hyper organized way, and its hierarchical format, what ends up happening is you really start to see your life period, and everything in its proper perspective. It's almost a disservice to just say it's a method of classification. It's actually a way to see and interpret life around you in a very intuitive way, and in a way where there is mystical participation. All right, so continuing forward here. The tree is grown through experience. Now, that word experience, I got to go back into the Indo-European root on it. Per equals to try, risk, danger. Danger is a catalyst to gaining learning from experiment and or experience, which share the same root. Okay, Zerez equals 214 is catalyst. Also, 214 equals ruach, air, wind, spirit, or mind. This is actually the intellect as a hero being shaped by its bouts with chaos. For example, a dragon versus a hero. Although the dragon is dismembered and oftentimes its parts are used to create new worlds, the dragon / chaos is ever living and inexhaustible. Really, the hero and the dragon are one and the same. Okay. The victory, the uniting of opposites, ever changes the hero's consciousness. This is the process of self-growth. Okay, so continuing forward, there are two trees. The egoic tree, which needs to be cut down. The tree which is spiritual and eternal is connected to the self. So the tree that's connected to the self, there's no way to uproot that and cut that down. But the egoic tree is something that's gonna stifle your growth. Because the thing is to say egoism, for instance, is to say that you already know. I already know this, man. I don't need to learn that, man. I already know this or this. You stifle your growth. You stifle your ability to classify, to bring more knowledge into the tree of life, if you will, to allow it to green. You're stifling and it's growing. It's greening. It's like a weed. The tree of the ego is like a weed that's gonna sap the nutrients of the tree of life, But I really do not believe that the tree of life itself can be killed due to the fact that it's an eternal archetype. You know what I mean? And then also too, I don't believe that the egoic tree can actually all the way be cut down and rooted out, because there is an ego self axis if you refer to Edinger's literature on the individuation process, of analytic psychology, which has roots in Gnosticism, has roots in alchemy as well, though, too. You know what I mean? And consciousness, to be able to consciously understand and consciously be there, consciously weigh out the situation, the ego is necessary. The ego is part of that experience. You know what I'm saying? But I would go so far as to say that it needs to be trimmed back. It needs to be kept in check. It needs to realize that it is the lesser tree that pales in comparison, that needs to glean from the divine tree, the spiritual tree. It pales in comparison to it. You know what I mean? So anyways, continuing. Thought, intelligence, logos, understanding, wisdom, legislation, insight, foresight, and it is form giving are ideas that link to the tree of life. Okay, So continuing forward, we're going to look at the dove, okay, which deals with masculine energy. This is the slow brain center, okay, that it's talking about. If we just look at the brain in two ways, we're still looking at a top-down model, but we're breaking it into slow brain and fast brain. Fast brain being reptilian and limbic. Fast brain being reptilian and part of the limbic, and then a slow brain being neocortical and some parts of the limbic. Okay, some higher parts of it, better parts, if you will. We're speaking very dualistically here now. Okay, so the dove is masculine energy. It is the daemon of spirituality. The daemon meaning it is between angelic and human, okay? It is creative. And if you think about it, receiving from the neocortex, receiving those impulses from the neocortical mind. Keep in mind the neocortex is not always on, like your reptilian complex and your limbic system, the older portions of your brain are. It shuts off at times. There's times when you're not really thinking on a higher level and you're just going on automatic. Okay, so this is your creativity is turned on when the dove shows up. It descends into the soul on its own terms. It is less accessible than the serpent. Okay, it abides with the mother, so it has some form of communication, if you will, with the limbic ideology. Okay, with the more emotional center, with the portion of you that can be moved, if you will, in some ways. Okay, it abides with the mother. So the dove also has interplay with the limbic system, yet is male logoic, while the serpent shares a closer relationship with the limbic center, as that center is more feminine and as the serpent is feminine. Okay, so I wrote that because I noticed it's like, yeah, you know, the R complex can speak to your emotions a whole lot quicker than the center of reason can. You got to calm the limbic center down and get it to receive the influence from the neocortex, which needs to flip on. It needs to turn on. Sometimes the reptilian centers and the limbic centers will work, and you know you're ready to go. You're ready to make a decision based upon past influences and based upon fear and everything else. Okay, so let's see. It represents effective thought. Okay, the dove bears our words to the mother, so to the emotion. Okay, it's chaste and solitary, like the hermit in the ninth tarot card, or ATU 9, called the hermit. Okay, it commands singleness, meaning it leads you to a state where you will be more apt to be alone. And being alone for too long may send you into a libido regression, meaning you will receive these higher spiritual type dreams, mandala images, dreams that are something out of the pages of a religious text. You know, I've had dreams like that during times like this. Okay, dealing with solitary. It commands singleness. Okay, brings in knowledge from the collective, the superego, if you will, in a more broadened sense. I say the superego because part of the superego is not just thou shalt do this or that, okay, which could be the conscience, okay, but I'm talking about more the way that the superego deals with lineage and information that's encoded into the DNA, and it deals with life lessons and patterns that were formed in you via generations. It digs deep and brings some of that choice information out that you may need at a certain time so you can get to the next step or stage in your life, and so that you could receive a message that can get you back on track. Okay, so we're going to go to the next portion of this. So it gives desires that lead to thought. Okay. and it deals with a meditative mind state. Singleness leads to this affective thought state. And there's a scripture that says, if thine eye be single, then thy whole body shall be filled with light. Matthew 6:22. One can sense the beneficial reciprocity between the flame/serpent and the tree and dove if one can cultivate the better sides of their attributes. Now, I'm talking about all of these collectively, since this is the last portion that we're going to read when it comes to these four. Okay, the open, patient, expectant but not clinging mindset is paramount in both. In order to attain to the greater, for the fire has within it the driving force of the psyche, libido aside from the carnal aspects of fire. The serpent, besides being a beguiler, is also an initiator. If one can see through the venom that there is a curative, indeed the serpent was a mediator between God and man as nous and Christ and a healer. As the serpent Nehushtan, which Moses lifted in the wilderness, which was directly linked to Christ. The tree of life, if not used to carry on a sense of blind heaping of knowledge, but used as a ladder by which to peer into the mysteries above the physical, if not utilized to heap up knowledge of material, but rather the fruit of righteousness, then it is appropriated in your favor. We must remember 1 Corinthians 8:1, we know that we all have knowledge, gnosis, right? Knowledge or gnosis puffeth up, but love buildeth up. And keep in mind, love deals with the limbic deals with the city deals with the mother. Those are ideas that deal with structure. The tree, which we're talking about still, deals with structure, organization, okay? While the dove can be exalted thought, divine thought, in rare form of vision, revelation, and reformation of mind, this can leave one isolated so far from his kinsmen, from others, that the vision like a beautiful specter would be all that could be had. One's friendship with the divine being the equivalence of enmity with the world. So balance is necessary in all of these intrinsic forces, which are real and far-reaching. Okay, very real. So 8, 9. So we're going to go to the golden flower references that deal with the feminine portion or masculine portion of these pillars now, okay? So the golden flower reference, Hun equals animus equals clouds equals demon. So we have cloud demon, and that equals higher breath soul from the Chinese kanji for Hun. Yang principle, okay, and it's masculine. Hun becomes Shen after death and is the expanding and self-revealing spirit or God. Think about that dove. Okay, that dove that is a self-revealing spirit. Okay, think about the tree. It's your knowledge. Okay, the knowledge. But there is the tree that comes from the self, and then you also have your egotistical, puffed up, blown up knowledge, where you're Mr. Know-it-all. You think you know everything. Okay, we all have it to some degree. Okay, so remember, the tree is the growing one, subjective knowledge, and the dove reveals knowledge from the realms of the perfected dead and the realm of archetypes. Okay, and I'm going to read the statement here in the other section because it applies to this section. It says, before separating after death, both belong and are united in the one effective true human nature, yet in the house of the creative they are two. Okay, and I explained what that meant earlier, or alluded to it. So the Hun, okay, or the Yang principle, resides in the heavenly heart. By day it lives in the eyes, in the consciousness. At night it houses in the liver, which in times of old was thought to be the seat of the emotions and libido. Okay, It is that which we have received from great emptiness, that which is identical in form with the primal beginning. Okay, so getting into the Parsifal mystery, the weapons that deal with the male or anima side, we have the wands, which are represented by the spear. It's phallic and quite serpentine, as in Moses and Pharaoh's duel of magical exploits of rod casting. We have man or masculine represented by this, expresses direction, and is also a goat. Okay, and as I said, there's some interplay, there's some interchange here. Now, the spear being a goat, okay, we go towards and forwards what it is that we personally know within ourselves, our own knowledge. We go for those things that we know. Our desires are formed off of what we know, what we personally know, our personal subjective knowledge. Okay, so let's go and talk about the dagger, the swords, piercing, dividing, discerning, penetrating, logos. Okay, the fact that this is male, the left side of the brain. The left side of the brain does what? It chops up, divides, chaos, things that are so holistic and things that are so ordered and so whole within themselves, right? So that it can understand it. It divides and chops up chaos, okay? But the grail unites with the spear, okay? Wands unites with cups. The bowl unites with the dagger, or the pinnacles unites with the swords, even in the tree of life, even in the tarot, okay? So something to think about there. So in the myth of Nuwa and Fuji, which are once again progenitor myth, okay, the square rule is on this masculine side. It's identification with the physical world. Straight lines and squares representing a leading towards a straightforward mindset. You know what I mean? Women like, for instance, I was talking about what men like in a woman. Women like men that know what they want. They go straight forward. They like men that are chiseled, the chiseled bodies. Okay, men with curves are usually fat guys, like really plump. You know what I mean? They're not. By natural selection, those are not. That wouldn't make a strong child. In the background, in the backdrop, the unconscious of a woman that is acting out her selection of a male suitor by natural selection. Okay, so these are some things that are shown in the idea of the Masonic symbols of the compass and the square rule. The square rule being linked to Fuji in the story of Nuwa and Fuji, which, like I said, they're a couple that look in so many ways so much like Abraxas, but they are, instead of being fully theriomorphic, well, Abraxas, I take that back, Abraxas isn't fully theriomorphic, he's anthropomorphic theriomorphic, so they are also the same. You know what I mean? Just the heads are of humans, okay, of male and female, but we see an allusion to the 10th picture of the Rosarium Philosophorum in their picture, which is the unity of the opposites. It's the Philosopher's Stone. It's the rebus. Okay, so and in Nuwa and Fuji, you have the union of heaven and earth, which is the idea of the yin and the yang coming together. Okay, heaven and earth being linked as one. Okay, so now that we have finished this, one last look at the diagram that I've been placing up here. I'm going to read the small print because there are partitions here of 72, 5 partitions of 72 that will equal 360. Okay, and we also see this in the idea of Jung's Systema Totus Mundus, the system of the whole world, okay, in which Abraxas features. I may throw a picture of that up again. 72 is a very important number to both Kabbalists and Gnostics alike, and much could be said of its relation to time, especially if we were to use it to divide the number of minutes in 10 days, which marks the passing of an angelic deacon pair through its astrological month. which will be equivalent to 200, a purely solar number in Kabbalistic gematria, as 14,400 divided by 72 equals 200. Also, there are 5 quinaries of 72 spirits that comprise the deacons, which could be said to be astrological / elemental spirits, or influences to man's consciousness, or an individual mapping of his or her psyche in a 360-degree fashion. 72 times 5 equals 360. Many other telling numbers can be gleaned from this number, which deserves its own lecture. However, not only does it pertain to this diagram at present, but this diagram shows that the opposites of God and devil and the angelic realm between them corresponds to the consciousness of man. The right side of the diagram, while interacting with man on the lower realm of illusory existence, has an upward trajectory. The left side of the diagram, while having a downward trajectory, comprises the dark, carnal, and fleshly. Yet it proceeds from a higher source, which is only in seeming, because only evil in seeming, if you will, or dark or whatever, because of our warped mirror of morals and social beliefs. The veil of the pleroma is truly torn within us. Yet it is in truth intact and ever has been, and the pleroma is within us. We need to unite to relink the aspects of our thinking which rigidly recognizes one thing as supreme to its perceived opposite. Then this diagram would be experienced as a whole, for example, without partition and abrogation. A good exercise to take up is to keep in mind an opposite of a quality that has cropped up in your consciousness. Yes, all qualities. Look at, investigate their polar opposites, and affirm their oneness. Pay attention to your projections and others' projections as a routine, and you will see the one source. It is our clinging to aspects necessary to living in our time. Left brain consciousness which will sever one unified thing to another, much like time is separated by the second to delineate a minute and an hour into a day. Even this is an illusion, for the right brain sees it is all existence in entirety, a holistic experience. The sectarian type or left brain thinking is why we give so much relevance to small things that occur in our lives that we must suffer, instead of realizing that these perceived sufferings are the core reason why we can even enjoy. And then what a farce is enjoyment if we really think about it that way. Just a shortened understanding of how the diagram should be seen and how Abraxas is seen as opposites in unison and expression. Okay, I am going to read about one of the progenitor deities. I'm going to read about one of the progenitor deities. There's still a lot of paperwork to go over here, and we are about 3 hours in to this lecture, meaning I'm probably going to have to break this up into 3 separate lectures. I'm looking at some of the other information that I have here, and it is quite possible that I could read it, but I'm probably going to read bits and pieces because I do not want to elongate this lecture too much longer. We've actually gotten really to a core understanding of the key elements within the 7 Sermons of the Dead that comprise the understanding of elements within you, that you can actually take this information that I've already given you and see how these energies operate in your life. And also, by seeing how they operate in your life and how they are actually part of your psyche, you can start basically doing something. It's difficult, but it's not so difficult because it's very easily stated here. It just takes some work to actually start sitting with the opposites. Don't do. exactly what you just feel like doing whenever you feel like doing. Sit with the opposites. Do some experiments and see what you're sitting with, what it turns into next. What will it change into? I'm having this feeling. I'm having this feeling. I sit with it. What does it change into? You see what I'm saying? Because then what you'll start seeing is one of the Hermetic principles, which is the law of polarity, starting to kick in. You'll start to see that pendulum swing, that back and forth, and when you start seeing that, it really awakens you to seeing the opposites in things, to seeing the opposites in yourself. And once you're able to start sitting with the actual transformation process, you can start documenting within yourself what some of these constants are. Oh, I feel this way, and then it changes into this. You know what I mean? So you know what to look for if you decide to hold on and not do something that you are desiring to do. You see what I'm saying? And by looking at your projections, looking at other people's projections, looking at how projections are forming your reality and how other people's projections are forming their reality, a lot of times more for the worse than they are for the best, because a lot of times we're projecting from the limbic center based upon old things that have happened to us, based upon old ways that we've been told to conform in society or whatever. You see what I'm saying? And the thing is we need to really take inventory of those things and look at the opposite. It doesn't mean you have to do the opposite, but look at the opposite. Take into effect the opposite, and start to notice those things around you, and why they're important, how they're important. You see what I'm saying? And what will happen is you'll start to unveil a lot of key truths within yourself. You'll start to see how they operate outside of you. And the thing is here's something big that I've taken away from actually doing that for quite a while. And what I've noticed is that everything that's going on within these interplay with the opposites is invisible. It's projected, meaning that by gaining an understanding of the wavelength that these things are operating on, you can interact with them as well, though, too. You know, you can deflect them, you can project them into situations, meaning you have a larger power, a larger magnetic power of influence in situations that you can actually take advantage of, and that nobody would really know that you were really the one that influenced that, but really you. You see what I'm saying? So it gives you what is termed leverage, and I'm going to talk about that in another lecture, in another approach on the pillars of Boaz and Jachin, because leverage plays a big key. And that will be a very short lecture, because I've written some very, 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 very condensed information on it, because it's something that I really just wanted to put it out, let people get the information from it, and let you go with it if it is your will to try to work it out in your life. Okay, so we're going to read about progenitor deities, because the reason why is because this will help you to understand the idea of Wuji, of Taiji, okay, and how the opposites are formed, and then not just how the opposites are formed, how all the 10,000 things, the multitude of things are created, and how they're put together, and how they're placed out there in a way where now we're stuck in all this Maya, this illusion, and how the illusion, understanding what the illusion is, can lead you back to an understanding of the one source. So we're going to do that one way here through the legend of Pangu. Okay? The legend of Pangu. Before I start reading this, I'm going to read a note quickly, and I'm going to go over as quickly as I possibly can some of the etymology of the actual Chinese simplified Chinese glyphs of the name. Okay,